Hey everyone, welcome back to Love Wins, where the truth matters because it's the truth that sets us free. All right, we're in our third episode of If You've Left Church, Don't Go Back, ... Today we're going to look at 4 different views of the church and what it is and what purpose it serves. 3 of them are unhealthy, and one of them should be the reason for why the church exists. So if you've come this far, I hope you haven't got the idea anywhere along the way that I think the church is not important. What does matter is understanding what the church is meant to be, why God wants us to be in community, and what we could accomplish together far greater than we could accomplish apart. All right, so the 4 different kinds or views of churches are the Bickering church, the Brothel church, the bunker church, and I'll save the last one for the end. So I'm using B so it's easy to remember. So the Bickering church, the Brothel church, and the bunker church. So the Bickering church, very simply and quickly put, is a church where people believe inside of it that the main purpose of the church is to get to the truth. Meaning we all have to agree on every little detail and every little nuance, and anyone who doesn't agree gets pushed to the margins and eventually pushed out so that we can purify the church and make it think and believe exactly right. These kind of churches are generally small. They're generally dominated by 1 or 2 dominant personalities, and they are super not healthy. Nowhere in the Bible does God say that we must agree on all things or that we should all be the same. In fact, Jesus very plainly said that his ministry and John the Baptist's ministry were very, very different, that as individuals they were extremely different, yet they were both working for the same purpose, the same goal, and that's how a healthy church should be. Different people, different gifts, different mindset, different emphases, but all working to uplift Jesus and to help people be happier, healthier, and more whole. So the Bickering church is not a church that you want to get involved with. And often those Bickering churches can never recover or heal or change until that dominant person or persons either dies or moves away. The Brothel church. The Brothel church is often a reaction to the Bickering church. So the Bickering church tends to be not only arguing about the details and we all have to believe the same, but they also tend to be legalistic and tend to be like, this is how it is. And so the Brothel church is a reaction to that. It's people who don't want to give up on church, who sense the value of church, but they're so tired of being controlled and manipulated and argued with and all the rest of it, that they envision a church where anything and everything goes. Some will disagree with me, and you could be right about this. I would say the Brothel church is healthier than the Bickering church, but neither one is healthy. Whenever we compensate and the pendulum swings way from one side way to the other side in a reaction to one extreme, we create another extreme, never usually produces anything good. So the Brothel church is a church where everyone can believe whatever they want, they can feel however they want, they can do whatever they want because we don't want to control anyone or make anyone feel, less or whatever. But it ends up being a church about nothing for nothing. Not healthy. Because Jesus is a real person. He had a real mission. He's building a real kingdom. And this universe can only recover and become what God intends if we understand what God intends and we allow him to work that out in each one of us so that the world and each person in it begins to recover. So that's the Bickering church and the Brothel church. I would say those 2 churches are not the majority or the main problem. The next church is a church that you will all recognize well. It has infected and affected history for long, long time. And I call it the bunker church. The bunker church is a church where the mentality is that everybody out there is bad and dangerous, and we have to come into the church and hide from them. And our only sense of mission is to grab the few people here and there who maybe aren't completely evil yet and pull them into the bunker. And we treat the church like a bomb shelter. The Jews, as a nation, had a bunker mentality. They viewed the world as a dangerous place full of heathen, evil people, and they had to protect themselves and their children and their identity and their nation and everything from them, which made them completely not just ineffective, but worse than ineffective, because they carried the name of God, but they were nothing like him. And anyone outside their walls who had a longing for God, which is most, if not all of us, have a longing for God of some kind, it made them believe that it was hopeless for them, that God was not for them. And so they were forced to find other gods and other answers, and so it continued. The bunker mentality is an extremely unhealthy view of what the church exists for. It creates an us and them mentality, and it builds walls instead of bridges. And if we're honest, most churches have, of all denominations, of all religious stripes outside of Christianity, have some form of a bunker mentality. So if the Bickering church trying to uber define all the details isn't where we should be, and if flip-flopping from that to a brothel mentality of, well, let's just all believe whatever we want and all just get along isn't the answer, and if a bunker mentality of pushing out the bad people and protecting the good people, isn't the mentality and isn't the purpose and isn't the role of the church, then what is the role of the church? I propose to you that the role of the church is a base of operations. So it's not a bickering place, it's not a brothel, it's not a bunker, it's a base of operations. And if you look at Jesus and his example with his 12 disciples and the growing group around them, and that's key, Jesus used his own influence and the influence of his closest followers to expand the kingdom further and further and further and further. And instead of Jesus setting up one location and calling people to himself, he moved around and went to the people. When Jesus left, the first word of his instructions to those who would remain and carry on his legacy was, "Go ye into all the world." In modern English, get out there to the whole world. Keep moving until you've reached everyone. You see, when you view the church as a bunker, its influence becomes very, very insular and very, very small. There's a church in the New Testament that you've probably never heard of. It's mentioned 1 or 2 times in all the 4 Gospels combined. The 2 major groups within Judaism at the time were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which you're probably very familiar with those terms, even if you couldn't necessarily define what their beliefs were, you've heard of them. They're constantly popping up. But there's a third group within Judaism at the time that you rarely hear from. They were called the Essenes. And the reason why you never hear from them is because they had taken the bunker view of the church to an extreme. And they had moved out of mainstream society and they lived in the wilderness and they basically distanced themselves from the world, not just ideology-wise, but physically. Like, you stay over there and we'll stay over here. You don't contaminate us and we'll have no useful impact on you. The bunker mentality doesn't grow the church. The bunker mentality kills the church. It kills the church. I'm going to go a step further and this is going to be sensitive and perhaps hurtful for some of you. It's not my intention. But there are some parents who raise their families in a bunker mentality. And they don't want their kids exposed to anything or anyone who could harm them. What ends up happening is those children grow up not knowing or able to reach, communicate with, perhaps even scared of the big bad them who's out there. And their view of the world becomes very narrow. Their ability to impact people becomes less and less. Jesus just never modeled this. You will not find anywhere in the life of Jesus where he adopted a bunker mentality. Quite the opposite. He crossed borders, he crossed cultures, he was everywhere, talking to everyone, because Jesus didn't need to fear the world. The Bible says, he that is for us is greater than any who is against us. Our confidence, our boldness, our security, our peace, all of that needs to be found in God, to the point that we can go anywhere and speak to anyone on any level because we're not afraid. Because he that is within us is greater than anything. If you grew up in a Bickering church, I'm sorry, but I can't change it for you. You can't change it for you. If you grew up in a brothel church, I'm sorry. You can't change that. I can't change that. If you grew up in a bunker mentality, I'm sorry, but you can't change it. I can't change it. All we can do is start from where we are. Go to Jesus. Go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. See how Jesus lived his life. See how Jesus interacted with other people. See how Jesus used his influence and how he built a team of people around him who believed in him, who believed in God, and who eventually came to realize this is bigger than my Jewish upbringing. This is bigger than my prejudiced mindset. This is bigger than my narrow view of the world. This is big. The church should be a base of operations. We should be coming together not to hide from the world, not to argue over minutia, not to have a good time. We should be coming together as a church to plan, to strategize. How can we tell people? How can we build a bridge to others so that we can share this amazing Jesus that we found with them? Not a Bickering church, not a brothel, and definitely not a bunker. The church needs to become a base of operations. I don't know what your local church looks like, but none of us have any hope of building what the church could be until we understand from Jesus what it ought to be. So thank you for taking this journey. We will continue in the next episode looking more closely at the vast difference between a bunker and a base of operations. We'll see you next time. God bless.